From government reports, whistleblowers, and recent revelations, this video might just convert you into a believer of extraterrestrial life. Put on your tinfoil hat, we are taking to the skies and diving into the mysterious as we count down the top 10 leaked UFO evidence by government officials. Starting off this list, in our number 10 spot we have the Disclosure Project. The Disclosure Project is a non-profit organization founded in 1993 by Dr. Stephen M. Greer, who was a physician and UFOologist, and the goal of the project is to bring forth information about the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence and their interactions with humanity to the public and government officials. The organization has collected over 800 witness testimonies from military, government, and intelligence officials who have had direct involvement with UFO sightings and extraterrestrial encounters. Literally, this entire group is aimed at doing exactly what we're here talking about today. The Disclosure Project believes that governments around the world have been suppressing information about the existence of extraterrestrial life and that the truth needs to be disclosed to the public. We love a little whistleblowing. They advocate for the declassification of government files related to UFO sightings and for public hearings on the issue. The organization has received criticism and skepticism from some who believe their claims are unfounded. However, the Disclosure Project continues to push for transparency and the release of information to help us better understand our place in the universe. Did you see those James Webb photos? How are we supposed to understand our place in the universe? Alright, when the universe is that big, buddy, still processing it. In our number 9 spot today we have the Chilean UFO. Okay, so it turns out that there's been a lot of UFOs spotted in Chile, and the government isn't exactly shy about releasing some of the footage. In 2010, the Chilean government released a series of UFO footage that has since become one of the most compelling pieces of evidence in the history of the phenomenon. The incident began in November 2010 when Chile's National Agency for UFO Research received reports of strange objects in the sky over the country's capital, Santiago. The agency then requested the assistance of the Chilean Air Force to investigate the sightings. The Air Force dispatched a team of experienced pilots to investigate the objects, which had been picked up on radar. The pilots were able to track the objects and capture video footage using advanced equipment. The footage showed multiple objects flying in formation at high speeds, performing maneuvers that seemed impossible, really, for any known aircraft. After careful analysis, the Chilean government concluded that the objects were not weather balloons, they were not aircrafts, or any other known objects. While the government did not explicitly state that the objects were extraterrestrial in nature, the incident has been widely regarded as one of the most credible pieces of evidence in support of the existence of UFOs. In our number 8 spot today we have the Go Faster video. In 2017, after the existence of the Advanced Aviation Threat Identification Program became more well known, a video was released of an encounter between an FA-18 Super Hornet and some sort of unidentified flying object. This encounter wasn't actually supposed to be released initially, but the New York Times allegedly leaked it, so the government didn't really have much of a choice and decided to release it themselves. This video was the third in a series of 3 videos. We will talk about another one later on in this list. With this particular video, there weren't a ton of details released about exactly what happened during this encounter, but using the Raytheon Advanced Targeting Forward-Looking Infrared Pod, they were able to capture an extremely fast-moving white oval that was around 45 feet long. The oval had no wings and didn't appear to have any kind of exhaust either. They were tracking the UFO at an altitude of 25,000 feet just above the Atlantic Ocean, and they were shocked as the craft rotated on its axis and flew away. There was no explanation released with the footage because it truly is unbelievable and currently unexplainable. In our number 7 spot today we have the Phoenix Lights. The Phoenix Lights UFO incident occurred on March 13th, 1997 when thousands of people in Arizona reported seeing a series of bright lights in the sky in a V-shaped formation. Eyewitnesses described the lights as silent and moving slowly across the sky. The event gained significant media attention and became one of the most well-known UFO sightings in history history. Some skeptics dismissed it as flares or a military exercise, but many other witnesses remained convinced that they had witnessed something otherworldly. One of the most interesting witnesses in this case is former Arizona Governor Fife Symington. In 2007, he decided to reveal that he had seen the object himself, and not only this, but he described it as not from this world. Despite the multiple witnesses and this government official's testimony, the incident remains a mystery, and to this day, no official explanation has been given for the strange lights seen in the sky. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Project Blue Book sighting. Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Richard French was once tasked with being an investigator for Project Blue Book, which was the name used to describe a study of UFOs conducted by the United States Air Force from March 1952 to December 17, 1969, when the project was terminated. While his job was meant to be to investigate and essentially debunk UFO sightings, later in life he took to Congress to stand up and explain his own UFO encounter that he was never able to explain away. The moment that truly stuck with him all of these years took place back in 1952. He was sent off to Newfoundland after there were reports that a UFO had crashed off of the coast of St. John's. As he arrived to the scene, there were at least 100 people who all stood and stared into the water, and as he was able to follow their gaze and see what they were all looking at, he couldn't believe his eyes. He recalled the water being quite clear, and under it you could see two circular crafts, each one approximately 18 feet in diameter. He said that they were both floating just below the surface of the water, no more than 20 feet from the shore, and not only this, but he could also see two beings with the crafts. He said, quote, "The first thing I saw was the UFOs, and it was apparent to me that they were doing something to the craft, and I couldn't really tell what because they were on the bottom side of it and not visible to me except when they would occasionally get over to the side where I could see them." He claimed he watched on as the beings worked on the craft until one of them raised out of the water and disappeared, but not before accelerating to speeds in the neighborhood of 2,500 to 3,000 miles an hour. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Coyne Mansfield incident. The Coyne Mansfield helicopter incident occurred on October 18, 1973, when 4 members of the Ohio Army National Guard were flying in a helicopter over Mansfield, Ohio. Suddenly, they encountered a large metallic disc-shaped object that was hovering in the sky. The object began to move towards the helicopter, causing the crew to take evasive maneuvers. Despite their efforts, the object continued to follow them, eventually passing overhead and disappearing into the distance. The crew reported the incident to their superiors, and an investigation was launched by the military and the Federal Aviation Administration. The incident received significant media attention, and it remains one of the most compelling UFO sightings on record. What makes this incident particularly intriguing is the credibility of the witnesses. The crew were experienced pilots with military training, and their account of the incident was corroborated by radar data and other witnesses on the ground. Despite the extensive investigations, no satisfactory explanation has ever been offered for what they saw that day. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Congress report. For this one, we are talking about a recent report that was delivered to Congress from the Director of National Intelligence. Basically, since August of last year, there has been a total of 510 unidentified aerial phenomena observed in protected airspace or near sensitive facilities. According to the report, 26 of these were described as drones, 163 were labeled as balloons or balloon-like entities, and 6 were described as clutter, whatever that means. This is all fine and well, but the concern sets in when we consider that this leaves 171 sightings unaccounted for, some of which, quote, appear to have demonstrated unusual flight characteristics or performance capabilities. It's also important to note that the majority of these sightings are coming directly from Navy and Air Force pilots. Here's the thing. What we, as the public, know is only a 12-page declassified summary of the actual, real, secret report that was delivered to Congress. Only time will tell if we ever find out what the rest of the report includes or what will happen with further investigation into the 171 sightings, but hopefully if answers do arise one day, we'll find out. In our number 3 spot today, we have the advanced technology. So this UFO sighting comes from a while ago, but it just recently became quite relevant, and that is because because some former US Air Force personnel have begun explaining to the Pentagon that they believe back in the 60s there were UFOs that supposedly had the ability to turn off their nuclear warheads. Apparently, these officers recently told this to the government's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, who had contacted former Air Force ICBM launch officer Robert Salas to get information about the encounter with an orange flying disc that switched off 10 warheads at Malmstrom Air Force Base, Montana in 1963. There was another former officer, Dr. Robert Jacobs, who also apparently told the AARO that he had gone as far as to make a film of the UFO for the Air Force in 1964, and that this film captured images of a UFO shooting a test missile out of the sky. With the piquing interest in UFOs and the potential for an advanced civilization apart from our own, it appears as though the government is spending more time now researching and looking into these claims because, well, why would they make them up and then continue on with the same story some 50 years later? In our number 2 spot today, we have the USS Nimitz Tic-Tac UFO incident. This UFO sighting comes from 2004. On November 14th of that year, the USS Princeton noticed an unknown aircraft of some sort that was about 100 miles off of the coast of San Diego. For 2 weeks prior to this crew had been tracking a strange flying object that would start out at around 80,000 feet before extremely quickly dropping to hover right above the Pacific Ocean. Commander David Fravor and Lieutenant Commander Jim Slate went over in 2 fighter jets, and when they arrived they saw what at first appeared to be churning water while there was an oval shape just below the surface. After this, a white oval-shaped object appeared above the water, but it had no markings on it. Like no windows, nothing that would indicate an engine, no wings, and the infrared monitors on the jets didn't pick up any sort of exhaust. The commander and lieutenant commander tried to intercept this strange aircraft, but it very quickly flew away and reappeared on the monitor 60 miles away. And when I say quickly, I mean that it was moving at 3 times the speed of sound and over twice the speed of the fighter jets. So faster than any kind of technology we currently have. We still don't know exactly what it was, but it certainly was beyond our current capabilities. Finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have the Roswell Incident. This incident is like the mecca when it comes to a government leak. I mean, this incident is infamous for a reason. The whole thing started in 1947 when some sort of crash took place near a ranch in Roswell, New Mexico. Shortly after this, the Roswell Army Airfield released a statement saying that they had recovered a flying disc from the ranch, but the Army quickly retracted the statement and said that it wasn't that, but instead it was just a conventional weather balloon. So it was a little sketchy, but most people just let it slide until the 1970s. What happened in the 70s is that a retired lieutenant colonel began to speak out. In an interview with a UFO researcher, he said that the weather balloon story was a cover-up and that alien remains were actually recovered from the crash site. There were both first and second-hand witnesses who claimed that not only were there at least one, but possibly more alien spacecrafts that had crashed at the scene, but also that extraterrestrial remains were recovered by the military, who then began to engage in a cover-up. In 1994, the story changed from a weather balloon to a nuclear test surveillance balloon from Project Mogul, and it was stated that the stories of the alien bodies were probably just test dummies that had been dropped from high altitudes. I'm not gonna lie, the whole thing sounds a little sketchy. I obviously wasn't there, so I can't say for certain what happened, but someone is definitely lying about it. That's what I know. Alright guys, that has been our list for today. Thanks so much for checking it out. I've been your host today, Olivia Kozlowski, and I will see you again soon. Bye!